And that way we can say a big warm welcome. We are at Becoming of Business Dialogue, and I can't believe I have the fortune of having Jude Currivan here with me today. And this awesome person, and I was describing you for my daughter this morning, and I said, I have the pleasure of talking to one of the wisest people I know today. And so that's the kind of day I'm going to have. So a big warm welcome, Jude. How would you like to describe yourself?
Gosh, someone who's curious.
There you go.
Someone who's been curious all my life. My mum used to say my favourite word was why, and that's still the question I ask because I'm just curious of the nature of reality, our place in it. Who are we? The small questions that, don't really matter. But they do matter and have mattered to me because what I've realised over a life journey of curiosity and discovery is sometimes the bigger the questions we ask, oddly, the more intimate the answers become and are. That the world isn't out there, it's in here. It's both end. But it's interesting that, we're talking about the strapline of the organism I co-founded called Whole World View. And it's act local, feel global, think cosmic. But now when I talk about thinking cosmic, it's so that we realize that cosmos, that wonderful, vast, marvelous cosmos breathes through us. It's such an intimate relationship when we realize that we are inseparable from the whole world. And we've told ourselves for a long time we're not. So my journey of curiosity and how I describe myself is, guess what?
Yeah. What a beautiful invitation. And you are bringing us right back into ourselves with those big words. Because if we can feel what you're saying, that we have this cosmic reality that we not only have, but that we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We are. And then, when people say, oh, why do I matter? Well, you matter because you're a microcosm of this wondrous universe. The universe has spent 13.8 billion years getting you to this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Getting you
matter.
here, specifically
Getting you
you.
here, specifically you, getting
Every
each.
single person listening, specifically you, that's how
Ex-
long it's taken. Yeah.
Exactly.
And thank you for bringing that into the space because what I find, I do a lot of mind training and leadership development with companies, and the people I meet and coach and teach, I notice that there is this underlying thread, no matter what kind of personality they express it
Mm,
through. There's an underlying thread of not mattering, that what
mm,
I do can't possibly matter.
mm,
And some people have taken steps to recycle their plastic bottles. Okay, I can matter in that way. But if we take this deeper, into a deeper realm, what we then can feel is that we need to befriend that question whether or not we matter in the big picture, in the big evolution of this wonderful, mysterious organism that we keep living and breathing with and in. And so, can you help us as a cosmologist and as one of the wisest people I know and who's been curious your whole life and done a lot of studying with this and living in this? Can you help us understand what role we have in evolution? I know it's a big question, but I feel like we
mm.
actually need to talk about it as we are gathered as business people and just people being here and living here. It's a deep question. What do you say?
It is a deep question, but it's a fundamental question. And often in our busy lives, we are so busy that we just get on with things. But then sometimes in the dead of night, we do wake up and we ask those questions. What am I doing here? Where did I come from? Why does it matter? And I was certainly taught at school, and this is not my worldview, and it never has been my worldview, but I was taught at school a scientific worldview, a paradigm that was essentially based on a universe that didn't have any meaning inherent within it, that didn't have an evolutionary purpose, that evolution somehow through random occurrences and more by accident somehow ended up here and with us. And that's a universe that is essentially dead. And it's a universe where, in that way, we don't matter. Nothing matters in that sense, at its worst, lowest, most extreme perspective. But that paradigm, that scientific paradigm, materiality and separation, is now being turned on its head. It's been upended fundamentally by the latest scientific discoveries and evidence. And those discoveries are converging with universal wisdom teachings, with spiritually based teachings, with indigenous teachings that have always said, yes, we do matter. Science now is coming to that same perspective. And what's emerging is a new narrative, a new story, not just of what the universe is, but who are we? Because what it's revealing, Linda, is a universe that meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves from simplicity to ever greater complexity. And a universe that does so as a unified entity where everything is interrelated and interdependent with everything else. And in this universe and this story, we naturally matter. We naturally have meaning and we naturally have evolutionary purpose. So we don't separate ourselves from a universe that is itself separate. We're slap bang in the middle. We're actually standing on its bow wave of evolutionary potential. It seems to me that after 13.8 billion years of evolution, just a small thing, it's not a small thing, but the hydrogen in the water of our body is almost as old as the universe itself. It's a few minutes younger than the very beginning of our universe. So the story of our universe is our story. With every breath we take, the universe breathes through us. We innately matter. We have evolutionary purpose. And at this time, and I'd love us to explore some of this, at this time, it seems to me that it's not our biological evolution that we're being invited to step into. It's our conscious evolution. To literally, first of all, wake up and remember that this is who we are, that we are microcosmic co-creators of our universe's evolutionary impulse, and then an understanding that we are inseparable. Then what? What choices do we make when we realize that we can't not have meaning, that we can't not matter? we do matter. So on that basis of a knowingness, what then do we choose?
It's so beautiful. I almost feel like I have to pause and take it in and let everybody take this in, because what we're really doing now is that we're challenging at least a few hundred years of pretty specific programming ever since the Enlightenment of that we don't matter, because what we really need to do here is that we need to have measurable results and everything has to be proven, and we are essentially living our world through third person. And what you are now doing is that, and I don't feel like you're inviting us into something new. I think that you're inviting us into something that's been true for a long, long time. And I've read several of your books, and you have also contributed lately to The Great Upshift, which I am reading with interest. One of the things that you are writing about is that we have evolved already into the type of human that started about 2,500 years ago and emerged into a period where we did think about meaning. We did experience the purpose here of being alive. And there were a lot of interesting people coming about 2,000 years ago having ideas about this. And then things took a different turn. And so, right now, if you talk about evolutionary trajectory, we kind of were on a trajectory pointing to purpose and meaning in a bigger way. And then we made choices in science and business where we said, no, actually, that's not what matters. The universe is dead. We're here by random. And our only purpose, if you're going to have one, is to make as much money as you can before you die. And and now you're sort of re-inviting the trajectory to point toward meaning and purpose by embodying this meaning and purpose. And what I hear is an invitation to be part of evolution in a new way. And specifically as business people and leaders, where do you kind of see us possibly going with this? I mean, you're opening up a new trajectory. And if we slide on over to that and take the ride into Jude's vision of a future that include this inseparability between not only humans, but all beings, including the earth and the sky, what does that look like when we've taken that ride for a bit?
I don't know.
Wonderful. Let's imagine together.
Let's do that. Yeah, I'm only teasing you, but I'd like to perhaps respond more fully to that. I'd like to take that step back to what you're referring to, Linda, that around 2,500 years ago, began what's sometimes been called the axial age. And it was a turning point in the way that humans, again, as you say, saw ourselves. Because we're a storytelling species. So our narrative is essentially underpinning our worldview, and that underpins our behaviours. So around 2,500 years ago, as you said, there are a whole sort of series of waves of impulses, of new ideas that were offering humanity different ways of perceiving ourselves, different from the indigenous teachings and traditions that perhaps had pertained for tens, 100,000s of years before that. And what that did is it set us down that ongoing road of individuation. The me identified in differentiation from the we and the all. And those ideas came through, and many of them were spiritually based, but they morphed into that axial journey into more organized religions. And those organized religions, in some cases, not all, because in the Asian traditions, they continued as a spirituality based, but certainly in the West, they morphed into quite authoritarian religion. And so by, the Middle Ages, just before the Enlightenment, the worldview was very much managed, controlled by the church, and was really not enabling more of a discovery process to flow. And so around 400 years ago, we had a group of folks called natural philosophers, including people like Isaac Newton and Francis Bacon and others. And what they were suggesting is that in order to reveal the world at a deeper level, a greater, wider level, required experimentation. So there was that sense of curiosity there, but also instead of accepting the superstition or the authority of the church, to go and find out for yourself, and to do it in ways that were able to be replicated and shared. And that really began the journey that continued down this process of individuality and enlightenment, but also a schism away from the religions as they were at that point. But also progressively, for reasons that were very sensible at the time, the focus was on the physical world. Because if you were just investigating the physical world, you weren't a heretic. If you were trying to sort of look bigger and wider and deeper, then that was dangerous territory. So science, as it became known, was more and more exploring the physical world. And it did so through a series of methodologies that took things apart to try and understand what they were made up of. And that took us a long way. But what it did do by the end of the 19th century, it had come to a worldview of a mechanistic universe. And so all of the structures that in the Industrial Revolution grew up and found their flowering at that time had that mechanistic worldview at their center. So that was about hierarchies. It was about imposition. It was about exploitation, because we'd separated ourselves from that deeper awareness that we are inseparable. And we'd come to that point where our organizations, our governments, our education, our healthcare were all based on that worldview. And that's still the case. So now we have a situation 150 years later, despite the clues that were given to us in 20th century science by quantum physics, that and relativity physics, that our universe does exist and evolve as a unified entity. The focus through science in the 20th century wasn't on those deeper philosophical foundational questions of who are we. It was about the technologies that came from those insights. So now we have a 19th century worldview with 21st century technology based on 20th century science. And now it's all coming together with the latest scientific discoveries that are upending all of that mechanistic viewpoint. And instead we are being invited once again, but having gone on this long journey since, back to that, as you say, that deep, deep knowing that we do belong and we do matter. And now we're being invited to perhaps, as you said about Ken Wilber earlier, to not just wake up and grow up and clean up, but as I describe it, and show up, but link up and lift up. Because with this new understanding as leaders, as business leaders, as conscious business leaders, we can have this understanding of the unified nature of reality. We can step more into that empowerment of what that offers us. And we can perhaps consciously become coevolutionary partners with our planetary home, with our entire universe, because all of it is flowing through us. As we are part of it, it is inherently part of who we are.
So beautiful. And then that invitation leaves it up to everybody's imagination, both
Yes.
their unique imagination and our collective imagination, to create something that inevitably will be different than what we do today.
Yes,
Yeah.
because our worldviews are the lens through which we see the world, make sense of it. And so they're the lens through which we choose our behaviors. So if we're seeing through a lens of separation, then guess what? We behave as we have behaved. If we see the world through the lens of wholeness and realize that we're real, the world is real, but separation is an illusion. When we see the world through that lens of wholeness, we behave very differently. You know, if conflicts are a natural outcome of a worldview of separation, then
Yeah.
peace is a natural outcome of a worldview of wholeness. And each of us is unique. So as you say, each of us can say yes, hopefully, to that invitation with our unique gifts, our unique passion, our unique ways of being, our personas, what we bring to this. Because this is why the universe is so, for me, so extraordinary. because its unity is not uniformity.
Ah,
Over its
you got to say that
entire
again. So let that land with everybody. Say that again.
unity is not uniformity. Unity is expressed in radical diversity. We are each unique for a reason, because it's
Yes.
all those unique notes that can create the wonderful symphony of our collective awareness. And if we actually can now begin to understand and experience and embody what I call unitive awareness, that is what can guide us, invite us, inspire us, empower us into a new and unitive age. The journey of the axial age is coming to its completion. Its wave of potential has come through and is falling away, but a new wave in our collective consciousness is emerging, that of a unitive age, where we celebrate unity in diversity, even more so, when we celebrate it even more than unity and inclusion, where we celebrate it in unity in belonging, because we're, as well as we matter, we belong. We don't
Yeah.
have to. We don't have to be invited into this party. We
No.
belong here.
Yeah. And the way that I sometimes think about it, I often translate things into images and sort of sensations within. And when I think about the unitive narrative that you've been so instrumental in forming, and we we have so much to learn from the tenets of unitive narrative, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. I think would be useful. The For those who are new to this, one way of feeling into a unitive narrative is to see it as, you mentioned the word symphony, and I want to double click on the idea of creating a musical piece together that is in harmony, not that we all play the same note on the piano. It's about we're playing different notes and different instruments, and we know most of us have had experiences when we sit in front of a live orchestra and they're playing all these different instruments, and you have this out of body unitive experience of awesome harmony coming from these musical notes. And that's how I think about the unitive narrative, also because even if you just play the triangle, you are needed here. You are, you don't have to play the big drums or being the whatever it is, whatever's loudest, and I think that that's helpful because I would like to get to a place sooner rather than later where we do recognize how deeply we matter for the tapestry of this beautiful universe that we are experiencing right now. Yes, it seems like you wanted to respond to that.
First of all, I was going to say that I was only allowed to play the triangle in my school orchestra.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, it's like relegated to the triangle.
Relegated triangle. But I love that. I love the metaphor because it has such richness in it. Because, when you listen to an orchestra and they tune up at the beginning, you can tell where you can tell where people are out of tune. So for our orchestra, as a species, as a planetary species, it's about each of us tuning up our own note, our own authentic note, because nobody else plays that same note. But often through our life journey and for many, many reasons, we don't play our authentic note. But when we can and when we do, that is what we can contribute to this wonderful cosmic orchestra that we're all part of. We can all show up, and it doesn't matter whether we're playing one note in a triangle or 1,000 notes. It's our note, and as long as it's authentically our note, I would say that this is what our universe calls us. This is what we're invited to do. And that's why its unity is expressed in such incredible, diverse expressions We couldn't imagine. I mean, there are 8 billion of us, 8
Yeah.
billion notes. There are more planets in our galaxy than stars. Think of all the stars, or the galaxy, or the planets, all the people, all of the wondrous wholeness of our universe. Each and every one, from atoms to us, to plants, to planets, to stars, to galaxies, to the whole world, playing as a cosmic orchestra, playing this ongoing, emergent song of evolution. Because it's not written in its fullness, it's not written. Every moment is its potential to continue to explore that song. That's what we're part of.
So beautiful. And universe also means one song. And so
Unique verse,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So here we go. And I, because we can talk until we're blue in the face about different consciousness level and inviting people to understand that, well, here's the egocentric, here's the ethnocentric, and we're inviting you into the world centric and then the cosmocentric, etc. That will do nothing compared to having the experience of playing your unique and authentic tune and knowing and trusting that you belong here.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I want to take this beauty into a space of leadership that I know a lot of our listeners are curious about, which is something that often is talked about as heart based leadership. And I'm quite used to making a big case for the heart. And one of which, of course, is that the heart is 5,000 more times more magnetic than the brain. And there's a big pull, there's a big draw, there's a big magnetism that we can live in and express when we learn to live through and from our heart. Now, as a leader, of course, those qualities are just invaluable. But if we take this idea of heart-based leadership and we apply it to this arc of evolution that we've been looking at today, what comes to your mind when we are putting heart-based leadership into this conversation?
Well, what comes to me is that there's an ancient tradition, Chinese tradition of the Tao, and the Tao Ching says, in the beginning is the one becomes two, the two becomes three, and from the three, 10,000 things are born. So throughout the Chinese tradition, but also the Vedic tradition and many others, there is this sense of the wholeness of existence differentiating itself into two primary aspects, and one might call them the active and the receptive aspects. And we sometimes refer to them within our human experience as masculine and feminine. And often we tend to say, either the left brain or the mind masculine and the heart feminine. But the universe doesn't do either ors very often. It tends to do both ands. Because in the both ands tend to then become greater than the sum of their parts. So that's where the third comes in, because the ancient tradition of the sacred marriage of the masculine and the feminine, you might say heart and mind, births the divine child of higher purpose, of evolutionary purpose, of creative purpose. So it seems to me that when we can balance, and this is within each and every one of us, regardless of our biological gender, these energies, these aspects of consciousness play through us all. If we can balance those, and each balance, again, is unique to us. And when we balance that authentically, rather than behaving as we think we should behave, or other people want us to behave, but who we are authentically, when we bring our hearts and minds in our authentic expression and experience and embodiment, then the creative child, the playfulness, the joyfulness of that child essence flows through us. And that is, for me, one of the greatest gifts that as leaders we can offer those that we work with. Because I talk about being a servant leader. The old follow me hierarchical leadership as no more. But also I talk about us not embodying as role models, rather to be soul models. So when we are authentic soul models, showing up and getting out of the way of our ego into any opportunity to contribute, and when we bring that harmony of our hearts and our minds together into those circumstances and situations, then not only do we embody that third essence of creative child within all that we can offer, we invite others to do that too. Because when we're a soul model, knowing that we're inseparable from the whole world, we radiate, and we're in continuous communication with everything, but often we're not aware of it. But when we are aware of it, and when we radiate love and kindness and compassion, that is the integration of our hearts and our minds. When we bring all of that into our being and our service, then that, for me, is what I see in remarkable leaders. But we have that capacity and that potential. Every single one of us has that capacity and that potential, because that's who we really are.
And that child is a whole new level of authentic innovation for our times, and something for all business people to pay attention to. It's a different way of looking at that. And you also write about specific things that has to do with unitive consciousness that I think relate very much to the heart, which, if you're a leader who's heart-based, you don't have to check your notes if you're going to make decisions based on what's right or wrong. You're going to feel that deeply. You don't have to be like, what do we say about morality again? And it's like, no. you will know it. You will feel it deeply.
Exactly.
And you will have a natural reverence for life. And that's something that you often talk about in your books, is this connection, this relationship with all of life.
All of life, which is the indigenous traditions. We're not just talking here, and we both know this, about biological life. The indigenous teachings talk of all our relations, the sun, the moon, the stars, the whole world. And that literally, they are our relations. We're all part of the vast communities of life that is our living universe. And when we, as you say, Linda, when we experience that in our day-to-day lives, our earth walk, then that brings us into such a wonderful and profound relationship with our planetary home, Gaia,
Yes.
as a living being. And the other thing, as leaders, I would really just love to invite us all to appreciate that we're the students here. We're the students.
We sure are. That's why we should all, in our own unique way, embody your leading word in your life, which is curiosity. And in mindfulness, we would call that a beginner's mind. And to have that as our attitude as we show up, we're here to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of organizations right now that want to create a learning organization. They think that's really good, and they've been looking at the research. They understand that this is what we need to be. But it has to start in you. It has to start within. So this is really the bigger and deeper roadmap that we are laying out. I have to say that, because I talk about inner transformation in leadership, and I do that on a daily basis, I meet some business people who push back, and they think it's quite nonsensical to talk about being close to nature. And I often point out that as a Swede, Sweden as a nation was very impacted by the big tsunami in Thailand many years ago, because so many Swedes were there and perished. And one thing to note about this tsunami that took so many human people's lives did not take a single wild, non-caged, non-tethered animal.
Absolutely.
And of course, that's because they knew 2 days in advance that this was coming, and they headed up the mountain. They ran to safety.
Yes.
And there's something, even for the hardest business person, to realize that we are doing what you're saying, which is that we are on an earth walk. This is where we live. This is our home. And to have relations with that in a non-local, intuitive way is actually to a big benefit, even when it comes to something as, talk about KPI, talk about ROI. You lived. Now, how about that for a measurement, So I think that with a little willingness and a little openness, I think that we're all ready to hear your very, very wise words. And I could continue talking with you about this subject matter for another 2 hours. I do want to wrap up for a couple of reasons, and one of them being that we're out of time. But the real question I have is, what else would you like to put in the space as we round this wonderful, beautiful conversation off today, Jude?
Thank you, Linda, and it has been wonderful. Thank you so much. There are just perhaps 3 small things. One you mentioned just now. For me, intuition is our superpower. It's our natural superpower because of who we really are. That inseparability I mentioned from a whole, unified universe means that we now have not just the evidence, but we also have the framework, why this is as it is. So the sort of non-local phenomena, of which perhaps intuition and synchronicities are 2 wonderful examples. They are natural aspects of this emergent understanding. The other thing is, I know that a lot of conscious and other leaders, business leaders generally, are focused very much on innovation. And I'd just like to suggest that we might also consider innovation, which is the point you're making, because when we innovate, we can more creatively innovate, and to do so from that place of harmonizing and healing our relationships with each other and our planetary home. So I would love to see innovation alongside innovation moving
Love
forward.
it. Love it.
And the final thing is, you said about knowing what is right. And my mum taught me that when I was very small. She said, look, there are going to be many times in your life when it's not going to be easy, but always choose what you know is right, and you will know. You may pretend you don't, but you do know. So my guiding principle, thanks to my mum and all through my life, is if I'm in any dilemma or doubt, I ask, what would love do? And just do it.
Yeah. What would love do? What a beautiful guiding principle. And when we're in doubt, which is for most people every day, and a lot of business people feel that they don't have enough say because they are not the part of the CEO and C-suite crowd, and so what are they going to impact because I'm down here? And no matter where you are, I think it's important that we reiterate some of these points, that Because it could be easy right now for people to dismiss this wisdom with saying, well, in an ideal world, or saying, if I only had that option. And really, what we're saying here is that you do. And you have personally been part of business for a long, long time before you started gracing this planet with your beautiful words in written form and in speaking form. And yeah, let's end on the very practical note for business folks who might think that they have no leverage where they are. They can still do exactly and live and be in what you were saying. Any parting encouraging words?
Well, I always take wisdom from those who are much, much wiser than I am. And there's a wonderful author who survived the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl. And he talked about being at the very worst times of his life and learning from those times that however horrible, however awful the circumstances around him were, he had the freedom to respond. That was his liberation. What was his response to be? And thank goodness very few of us are ever in that horrendous situation, but we are in challenging circumstances.
Yeah.
So realize that we do matter and we can respond from what is right, what we know is right, and from that place of love within us. That is what I would
Beautiful.
invite us all to live our lives by. And when we don't quite manage it, don't give ourselves a hard time. Just show up for the next moment and the moment after that and the moment after that.
There you
Always
go.
with that knowing that this is who we really are.
Thank you so much, Jude. I really can't thank you enough for spending time here in the Becoming a Business dialogue. I appreciate you so much, and I hope to speak with you soon again. Thank you again.
Bless you, Linda. Thank you. And thank you for all you're doing. I really, really appreciate it.